Thanks for that, Kelly. And unfortunately, I can't see everybody, but look forward to talking, a little bit with everybody tonight on what's, what's happening here at USA Climbing, how the COVID has impacted our operation, and what really we're looking at here in the coming season. So let's just jump, right in. First, welcome and thanks for joining. Certainly excited to provide an update on everything happening here at USA Climbing, but also to hear from many of you and any questions you might have. So I think, as Kelly alluded, certainly place questions in the chat along the way tonight, and we'll be monitoring those and try and get to those at the end of the first section tonight. So. First and foremost, definitely start the night. I hope all of you and your families are staying safe and healthy during these challenging times. I look back and think what an astonishing year it's been, and a very challenging time for many. So hopefully you and your families are all doing very well during these times. To the climbing gyms owners and operators, if we have any on the call tonight, certainly we know many of you are struggling. It's been inspiring to see our community, our climbing community, continue to support the gyms through these challenging times. And many gym owners who've reached out to me to also just ask, how can they help USA Climbing as well, even while they're struggling. So I think it truly is the strength of our community, and provides great inspiration, I'd say, on a regular basis. So we're all tied to the successes of the gyms, and committed, really to supporting the gyms from USA Climbing's perspective any way we can going forward. To our partners and our donors, a big thanks as well for standing by us. Many of our partners, as you can imagine, faced significant downturns in their business. And I'm thrilled to say that many of them stuck with us. And in some cases, some even doubled down to make sure we could keep moving forward as an organization. So that is a huge kudos to our partners. Certainly, when you can, support those key partners of ours going forward. And then finally, a comment on fundraising. While we didn't make a specific fundraising ask this year, many still continue to give to the organization, and be remiss to not thank those for that kind donation as well. To say it's been a remarkable year certainly is an understatement. From what now seems like 5 years ago, with the approval of the competition task force recommendations to the board, which improved the youth development pipeline, and the subsequent recommendations that followed from the realignment task force, adjusting boundaries nationwide for collegiate and youth categories, to not only qualifying for the Olympics, only to see them postponed, but qualifying a full quota of 2 men, 2 women, becoming one of only 3 countries in the world to accomplish this. To then the complete shutdown of climbing gyms and indoor climbing nationwide as we know it. Quite a reversal from a season that was going incredibly well. Through the challenging times, we remained focused on the mission, shown here. I'm not going to read it, but we remained focused on the mission and moving the organization forward towards getting our kids safely climbing again. We heard from you, and thank you to all of you that submitted responses to the questions we had asked, kind of around returning to sport. I think that showed us that we needed to continue to work hard to find solutions for kids to return to climbing again, and then focused on coming out of the pandemic, as a stronger organization, and we continue to focus on that. So hopefully you find the information tonight insightful. And while we certainly won't cover everything, I hope to have these town halls more consistently and provide updates and to hear again from you on important topics. So with that, let's just jump right in. I thought just be helpful. This is the team. Won't spend a lot of time here, but as you can see, we have grown as an organization, and I think as our goals and we aspire to do more, obviously having a solid team behind the scenes is incredibly important. So just wanted to provide a little view on the full team here in the office. Then with the board of directors, certainly this group provides an enormous amount of insight and wisdom for the organization. So big thanks to our board and all they do in volunteering their services. I wanted to point out here, as you can see, this is a 10-person board with 2 athlete representatives, and Jesse and Kyra. Shortly, we'll be approving a expansion of our board and announcing an expansion of our board to 15 members. And that will include 5 athletes in total. Some of these changes are to come in line with the U.S. Olympic Committee and now federal law standards or federal regulations as it relates to national governing bodies and their makeup of their boards and committees and task forces. So we'll be going from 20% athlete representation on our board to 33 1/3% in the very near future. So a big change, and I think is very notable from the sense of being a strong part of the athlete voice in the organization. So we look forward to the increased athlete input in the future. And a little bit on our committees, work groups, task forces. We have quite a few, outlining them here, and a number of which you're probably familiar with. But we kind of have a group that is kind of our higher tier, which is the NGC, Nominating and Governance Committee, our Audit Committee, Ethics Committee, judicial and subsequent hearing panels, and team selection. They require a little bit of a higher standard of an athlete participation. These again are requirements outlined by the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. Then we have our own AAC, which is our Athlete Advisory Committee. We're great at using acronyms all the time. We have a US OPC Athlete Advisory Committee as well, which is 2 different athletes. A paraclimbing committee, coaching committee, collegiate committee, judges, route setting, rules, risk, and the newest in those, the medical committee. And then on the task forces and working groups, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the competition belay work group, and the NCAA development task force. Knowing and seeing many of the questions that had come in advance, I wanted to pull out a little bit from 2 committees and expand a little bit further upon those. So the medical committee recently formed an incredible interest from the climbing community. So any medical committee members on the call tonight, huge thanks, an enormous amount of interest in this committee. And led to really a great, very diverse committee with backgrounds in all aspects of medical disciplines. And their real purpose now is to really look at everything we do from a medical perspective and make recommendations to us on any particular item that may come up. They've already created a return to sport guidance. We're currently finalizing the review of that document, and we'll look to share that in the coming week or so. That'll provide outlines around how to return, during these challenging times, and how to return as safely as possible. They're also looking at classification in paraclimbing. The paraclimbing classification task force was rolled into this committee. So they're looking at finalizing the recommendations for classification going forward. They're looking into any myriad of medical issues across, across the sport as a whole. Always interested, and again, this would be a place to encourage feedback in the chat of other areas that the community thinks the medical committee should look into. Eating disorders is an obvious one that has come up many times, and that is one they're working on. But certainly, feel free to comment in the chat of any other areas needing review. But this committee is very active and has been a great asset to our community. Then the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, certainly there were a couple of questions about that in advance as well. Their purpose is very similar. It's to make recommendations to the board and staff on how to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion within the sport. A pretty broad purpose for sure. They have so far kind of spent most of their time analyzing best practices, looking at NGBs, other sport organizations, what they're doing to see those best practices and what we may be able to implement. They've undergone training of their own to help them identify within our sport what we can do, and then going forward, they'll be beginning to look at making recommendations. So this has always been a marathon with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, not a sprint. So I think to set the expectations, we would expect to see recommendations start to come from the DEITF in the coming months, but to come for quite some time into the future. We certainly will take some time to implement change across the organization as a whole, and look forward to really the work that we'll see from the DEITF. Jumping into, and I know everyone wants to talk Kaya, we'll get there for sure. Just a little recap of our financial performance for the past year. It was quite a shocking year. The original approved budget of 5.39 million in revenue and 5.3 million in expense. We were on track to do quite well against that budget until mid-March. In mid-March, we approved a reforecasted budget, knowing that the impacts of COVID were going to be quite drastic to the operation. We approved that budget. The board approved that budget at 3.8 million revenue and 3.95 in expense. So you can see we quickly lost about 1.5 million in revenue overnight. And we're going from forecasting net income to forecasting a fairly significant net loss. Through quick actions, I'd say we were able to reduce expenses, keep the team on, but really minimize any expenses that didn't have to be made. And as a result, we were able to finish approximately about 3.69 million in revenue and 3.63 million in expense. So we ended up actually with a little bit of net income, and certainly some of that, again, is a test to members that stayed members. I want to continue to reiterate how important that was to our organization, to our sponsors, again, who continued to support us with their payments. And then also we did apply for and receive payroll protection funds from the federal government. And we also applied for and received economic injury disaster loan from the federal government as well. And in that case, we did that mainly as a precautionary measure to have a little bit more reserve in our bank accounts if necessary. We haven't needed it, but the funds were available, and we decided to take the opportunity to have a little bit more reserve. Looking at the 2020-2021 fiscal year, which for us starts in September, ends in August, The board at the end of August approved the budget of 5.9 million in revenue and an expense. Year over year, some key pieces to pull out. We do anticipate some increased revenue from events, excuse me. Increased revenue from sponsorship, and Kelly's done a great job expanding our sponsor or our partner pool. And then really the fundraising side, we were a lucky recipient of an anonymous donation that is ongoing for 4 more years. But then also the launching of the USA Climbing Foundation. So we had anticipated some increased revenue from that. We, probably not much of a surprise, expect a little bit of a decrease in membership for the year. Not with all the uncertainty that is out there. We knew that we couldn't, anticipate staying flat or growing as we have been growing for a number of years. Then on the expense side, pleased, not normally pleased for some increased expenses, but here we are increasing our commitment to host facilities. We're increasing the amount we pay host facilities for hosting our events. That's not enough yet, but I think a great step to continue to show our commitment to the host facilities. Our payroll has gone up. Most of that is timing related. And then just capturing some other expenses that have gone up there. On decreased events, some of this is event timing with the changes I talked about earlier from competition task force recommendations. Some events now fall in a different fiscal year than where they would have previously. And then some of those also were events that we were producing with ESPN. So those event expenses we were able to save this year. And then some contract labor, some of that is coming into payroll as well. So I think the best way, and I know this is the boring side, so the best way to think of our operation quickly is just we have 3 main revenue buckets, and that's events, sponsorship, and fundraising and membership. Those are rough numbers there. There's still other total dollars that make up our complete budget, but those are our 3 major buckets. And then on the expense side, also 3 major buckets that are events again, our administration, and high performance. And those are the numbers that roughly account for those as well. Jumping into the sports side, I think probably where most people are most interested. I just thought first a little bit of an update from a high performance elite side. Certainly some questions as it related to the Olympics. So Olympic update, yes, Tokyo postponement of 1 year. It is still called the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. A lot of unknown still going for those games, whether spectators will be allowed, whether it'll be reduced spectators, whether we have to quarantine coming into the games. I think a lot of those pieces are still moving targets. But I think the positive news here is Tokyo is committed, the IOC is committed to continue to work towards making these games happen. So great news for us and our debut to the world as an Olympic sport. As it relates to Paris, many have probably heard speed will be broken out from the combined. So we'll have a new combined, boulder and lead combined, and then speed will be a single discipline for the games. We expect the same numbers in terms of total participation. So for boulder lead, that would be 20 men, 20 women. And for speed, that would be 16 men, 16 women. Still a little bit of an asterisk here. The IOC has to ultimately approve continued inclusion in the Paris Games. And they will do that. Originally, they had planned to do that after seeing climbing's performance at the Tokyo Games. But now, obviously, they can't wait a full another year. So in December, we should hear a certain inclusion into the Paris Games. I'd say we don't expect any challenges there, but you never can be certain. And then beyond LA, we're working closely with the LA 2028 organizing committee to remain a portion of the games. Of course, we're working with our IFSC friends, but also with our LA counterparts to remain included in the games and hopefully even extend the number of single disciplines we have. So maybe break boulder, lead apart so that we could have all three individual disciplines represented. Wouldn't be, I'd be remiss if I didn't congratulate Brooke, Kyra, Nathaniel, and Colin on becoming our inaugural Olympians. Incredibly excited for all four of them, and a huge inspiration they are for everyone participating in USA Climbing. So congratulations to them if any of them are on the call as well. A quick note, is it related to funding for high performance? The USOPC provides funding, and it really is based on performance. So we're always focused on performance at the highest level to ensure support from the USOPC going forward as well. And that helps fund high performance, helps fund teams traveling to World Cups all over the world, World Championships. I'd say, we're still not as far as we would like to be in supporting the athletes to achieve everything they desire to achieve, but we're getting better each year and super excited with what we've been able to do just in the last couple of years. I always think it's worth noting, we have an important role on the international stage, and I think we've spent a lot of time improving our relationship with the IFSC and showing our commitment to the sport internationally. We are one of the major national federations, so that certainly comes with responsibility to be active in committees, to be active at their board meetings, and to be sharing what we're seeing from the United States. And the United States is always a key player as it comes to sport viewership and sport sponsorship. So that role is very important and one we take very seriously. One part of that, of course, is hosting World Cups. We have the Bouldering and Speed World Cup, which was postponed this year, but we'll be back hopefully in June, May or June this coming year. With the Boulder Speed World Cup, which is great, and great to again show our commitment to speed going forward. We look in 2022 to bring lead into the equation as well. So we would hope in 2022 that we're hosting all three discipline World Cups here in the United States. We've committed to a paraclimbing World Cup. Official dates haven't been announced just yet, but looking like that'll end up in October of 2021, where we would host a paraclimbing World Cup. And then we have also committed to hosting Youth World Championships for the 2022 season, originally for 2021, but with all the postponements agreed to postpone 1 year so Russia could continue to host as they had planned. So I think those are all money losing events, but are important to growing the sport and our commitment to the International Federation. So just wanted to share our work there. And then, of course, we're a member of the Pan Am continent. The Pan Am continent is quite underrepresented. Our South and Central American friends certainly have unique challenges that we're not used to, maybe for better words. So any places where we can help develop the Pan American countries, again, further roots our sport into the Olympic movement, ensures we may, stay on the program permanently, but also provides, great opportunities for our athletes, whether high performance or even our youth kids, to participate within the continent, not quite as extensive on the travel cost side. Just a quick note on some, the new events for the coming year. National team trials, which is currently slated for March in advance of the World Cup season, a new high-level event. The combined national championships no longer exists. We just have the national team trials and national championships at the end of the season. So these are March and roughly November timeframe events. I think it's important to bring these events up. These are events, especially the national championship event, that we look to bring to the masses more and more. The national championship event will be a 3-discipline nationals. And certainly, if not this year, in coming years, we'll look to bring this into major urban environments to introduce our sport to more and more people. And certainly here, pleased to announce we've secured additional walls from Entrepris in the form of a portable lead wall and a portable speed wall, so we can, if you will, go to a major urban park and build all 3 walls to host the national championship. So quite exciting, and where we're looking to push the sport in the future. And there were some questions in advance around the 2021 team selection. That team trials event is the team selection event for the 2021 World Cup season. Of course, our Olympians are already qualified and have take the first spots for team selection for the coming year, but then it'll have individual discipline athletes be able to fill the remainder of spots. John can answer more questions to that if there's some specific questions later on. Another exciting development this year is the launching of the National Cup Series as an all-discipline series. So this will consist of bouldering, lead, and speed in the 2021 season. We are excited to announce interest from the Pan American countries as well, and potentially hosting stops. So we've committed to host at least 5 stops, essentially 1 a month from April through October. And our Pan American friends in Canada, as well as Central and South America, are looking to maybe pick up 1 or 2 of those stops for the coming season. Place I'm incredibly excited about, having maybe not very high expectations at first of those countries being able to host an event as early as this year. Always anticipated that in the future, but a great event, and I think a great opportunity for those athletes now that don't make the World Cups, which is a very small number of athletes that do make the World Cup circuit, to have a developmental series, not just competing against Americans, while that's important, but also competing against PAC countries. This will be open to international participation. Of course, we would expect most of that coming from the PAC countries. So with that, again, super excited, and hopefully we see lots of our athletes out on the circuit. A bit about where we're going, and then we'll get over to Kaya. On the collegiate front, many of you probably saw we launched a NCAA development task force. Our efforts here are kind of running 2 tracks at NCAA inclusion, which I will say has become infinitely more challenging with the impacts of COVID on the university system here in the US. But I think we still have a very compelling argument, and we'll continue to move forward. Our timeframes just may slide by a year or 2 as we look to see the university systems get back on stable footing. And then the new divisional structure out of the previous regional base, a little bit of combining. Again, this came from the realignment task force. I think allows and positions the collegiate club system the way it currently is to continue to grow even further. On the paraclimbing side, we are bringing local events online and encouraging with our gym partners the hosting of more local events that can be done in combination with youth or collegiate events. And those events just really being an opportunity to participate more as opposed to just going directly to nationals. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit on the classification side, very close to finalizing para classification, and then starting to identify classifiers that can classify people at these local events, so we can grow, rightfully so, para and its reach across the country. On the recreation side, many of you probably heard here as well that we've certainly is in our strategic plan to grow the sport from a recreational aspect. Um, we do expect to launch a recreational series early in 2021. I'd say it's a bit too early to say exactly what that'll look like, but I am excited that the work there continues and we are getting close on a full announcement of what the recreational series will look like. And then what I'm sure most of you would like to talk about, seeing some of the questions in the chat as well, we'll talk a little bit about the youth side. And for that, I'm going to have John join me as well. As John's joining me, of course, many of you have seen the announcement, USA Climbing partnering with Kaya in the creation of the virtual qualifying series for this coming season. I'll touch on the high points. John has got the details. So, just a big picture. I think here we heard again from so many of you the importance of kids being able to return to sport, an overwhelming response in favor of returning to sport, of course, in the safest possible manner. And I think that's what really motivated us to come up with a new solution that would allow the safest possible return to sport this season. Had we stayed with in-person events, I think we'd be facing a very challenging season ahead based on where we are with COVID today. So I think the Kaya platform, I know the Kaya platform in this virtual series provides this opportunity to return. I will also say it certainly comes, and we expect some bumps probably along the way as we learn how to really pull off an entirely virtual qualifying season. We recognize its shortfalls in terms of sanctity of the competition and ability for participants to maybe not be completely truthful in reporting of scores or results and some of those things. I think we recognize that as one of the hurdles of the system, but in order to have a series that our kids could participate, felt like this was still the very best option for this coming season. I also wanted to touch a little bit on a rules addendum that'll be coming out later this week. Hopefully, this is going to the board for approval by the end of this week. With that addendum will come a very lengthy, frequently asked questions document that John has poured everything into that'll hopefully answer many of the questions that you all have asked. John will answer some of those as well later today, but those will be coming once the addendum is approved by the board. Also wanted to identify, that we have been actively planning contingency plans for areas that may not be open even in this qualifying series as currently outlined. And some of the things we're looking at would be allowing a region to participate in an individual qualifying event for their region and a different region. Most notable here would be, of course, California, with some still facing quite a few challenges with gym openings. But also looking at, really outside the box, could we bring our portable bouldering wall to some places if necessary, erect it outside, host a qualifying event over the course of 2 or 4 weeks to provide an opportunity. And then, of course, we can always look at advancing a specific region if it just was not possible to make any events happen there. As it relates to the regional and divisionals, certainly we saw some questions as related to that. I'd say we are still actively planning these as in-person events. We're hopeful, although I would say we'd be foolish not to be contingency planning those events as well. So we're looking at things, anything from a delay of the regionals to allow for a modified version of this virtual series to be implemented for our regionals that was maybe delayed to the divisional timeframe, and then combining divisionals with the lead and top rope season divisional championships to become a two-discipline divisional championship instead of a single, to allow, again, more time to hopefully be in a better position for in-person events. The reason I bring these up is just to show the amount of backup plans we're actively thinking of to provide opportunities for the kids to climb, and then to be able to provide those answers to you at a minimum 30 days out of, we're going to go in person or we're going to make this change, again, whether that's postponement of regionals and divisionals to later in the season or any of the other scenarios I outlined. I'd say, for the lead and top rope season, we're also looking at, we're currently planning those as in-person events, but certainly looking that we could implement a virtual series if necessary there as well. I'm sure we'll learn a lot in the first few weeks on the virtual series, and take what we learned there, and if we have to for the lead, top rope and speed seasons, implement a virtual solution, be able to improve upon it for that season. And then finally, youth national championships, I'd say quite a ways off here in July. Still moving forward with plans and preparations for that event. 3-discipline nationals, just as a reminder, so a very significant event, and we're close to announcing a host facility or host location for that event as well. So with that was almost 40 minutes of me talking, which is probably more than anybody wanted to hear. I was going to turn it over to John just to give a little bit more of the details. I probably said some things incorrect about the Kaya series already. So I'll turn it over to John to provide just a little bit more of an overview of the virtual series, and then we'll take some Q&A.
Thanks, Mark. Before we get started, I can't help but grin at the backdrop that's behind me. I think the last time I saw it was in January at the Combined Invitational. It was a pretty frequented thing that was coming out of our box, and because of COVID, we haven't been able to do a bunch of events this year. So it's kind of good to see that backdrop again, and then sort of a look towards the future, hopefully. So with the Kaya series and the announcement of the virtual events series, just to kind of table on some of the things that Mark said, the idea and the essence behind it was to establish some validity again. Give our competitors something to compete at again, give our gyms something to host, give our coaches something to coach, so on and so forth. We also wanted to make the series simple in that when we bring it to a host facility, it couldn't look like it always did in the past. We can't have in-person events, so we wanted to try and utilize the policies and procedures that the host facilities have in place and not overwhelm them with these new things that they would have to do for this competition. So in the virtual rules, you'll see get posted hopefully at the early part of next week. And the same thing with a robust frequently asked questions that will answer a number of these things. Some of them we'll address tonight, but just know that if we cover some kind of vaguely, that the more detailed answers are going to come in the frequently asked questions. So with the series itself, you'll have to download the app. Once you have the app downloaded, you'll look for and go to a climbing facility that is hosting one of these virtual events in your region. When you show up, you'll have access to tagged boulders that are tagged with the USA Climbing placard. You'll decide to attempt that boulder as you have always in the past at a red point competition. If you're successful in the attempt, you'll log the attempt in the Kaya app, and you'll also be required to upload a video that kind of signifies that you did that climb. Once that's done, that competition at that specific facility could last up to 2 weeks. Actually, it lasts for 2 weeks, a minimum of 2 weeks. So at any time, a competitor can go at any number of times and try and climb the climbs they want to get on. At the end of the competition period, your top 5 highest completed climbs that have a video associated with them will be scored for your total score for that particular event. Now, it's important to note because the ranking towards regionals has changed just a little bit, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So a lot of you are asking about the video uploads and how how can we ensure the fairness of the event? And as Mark mentioned, a lot of this relies on code of conduct, honesty of the competitors, and just know that we may audit the videos at the conclusion of each competition period to ensure that fairness, or to ensure that just things were done in accordance to the rules at the virtual series competition at that specific host facility. With regionals, we still will have a ranking towards the regional qualification, and it's still the top 25 with consideration of special cases. So those that have a special case from last year. The top 25 is determined from your score at a specific event. So let's say a competitor registers 10,000 points at one event, and then they go to a second event and they score their top 5 scores at the second event is 12,000 points. Well, that replaces their lower score towards their ranking for regionals. At the end of that, competitors are compared against each other at that a specific event, their highest score from a specific event, and the top 25 ranked competitors is who will qualify for regionals. Now, as Mark mentioned, you can cross regions. You can go to any number of 2 regions within your division, but it must be within your region. It must be within your division. And again, just to reinstate, the top 25 ranked competitors qualify for regionals. What if what if there aren't a number of events to take place in your region? They give you the opportunity to compete, like California potentially is at risk. Or if some states maybe are open in your region, but other states aren't. Well, those are all things that we're trying to stay in close contact with the host facilities in your areas, as well as your regional coordinators. And while we can't make a certain decision right now, just know that we will put out some information and try to stay attuned and communicate with you all to what's going to take place in those specific areas.
As John thinks of the next, I think he's touching on the key, right? That the overall goal was to provide an opportunity for our kids to return to climbing, but also for our gyms, who we know are challenged right now, to basically be able to run an event in the easiest, least impactful way possible to their operation. So as we approached it, we had a number of conversations with climbing gyms on this kind of idea to utilize existing sets, to allow for 2 weeks so that all the competitors would have enough time to utilize existing reservation systems, which in some places are as little as 10% capacity. So to ensure enough time to climb and the least amount of impact to the host facilities, I think this is how we landed on kind of this idea of this series.
One of the questions we've received so far is, will what we're talking about with Kaya tonight, will something be made similarly for the collegiate series as well?
Yes. Yeah, we got to get the youth series off the ground, work out any kinks, and then once we have that going, then we'll announce the start of the collegiate season, and it'll be a virtual component, just like the youth series is.
As well, paraclimbing.
Another question we received is, how will USAC ensure equality while using a 2-week competition window when access to the competition venues will vary widely based on the type of privilege? So ensuring that access to.
Sure. So some of these are known challenges with the series. Certainly, if you live closer in proximity to a host facility, you have more of an advantage. But what we're doing is working with the host facilities to ensure that the membership of the facility doesn't have priority access. So for the competition period, and access to the competition period is generally available to the public. And I mean, even the members of those facilities should be required to reserve a climbing spot during the competition period.
Now, for example, we did receive a request for specific times for a youth team of a youth facility, and we've gone to the host facilities there and said, no, they need to be available for all competitors to have access. As John mentioned, equal is maybe a bit challenging when some kids may live right next door versus an hour away, but to at least be as equal as possible.
Robin asks, do you think being able to go multiple days gives a strong advantage to those who live close enough to do so? Why not give each climber a set amount of time in the gym in one session?
Again, there's certain challenges with being able to ensure that takes place technically. So knowing that wasn't possible, giving them a 2-week time frame was the decision that we made.
Yeah, and I think ensuring the knowing the wide range of openings across the United States. Again, a place like California, who may be limited to 10% capacity, needed a significant amount of time to allow for participants to be able to make a reservation. So I think, as John mentioned, a known challenge, and I think a place where we would also agree that maybe this is one of the pieces we don't love about the series, but all the other benefits certainly far outweigh this particular con.
This year, do we envision any of our events being in person, regional, divisional, and nationals, or all virtual?
I am happy to throw in word to take that one. I think it's right now certainly looking challenging. My hope is outside of bouldering regionals and divisionals that we can return to in-person events. If not for the lead and top rope qualifying season, at least for the lead and top rope regional divisionals, which again at that point might be 2 discipline regionals and divisionals if necessary. So, and then national championships, I'm optimistic at that point in time. Again, we would utilize these return to sport protocols developed by the medical committee to still implement best practices as it related to hosting events during this time. Certainly they're happening. But I think the document, when it comes out, provides a lot of great solutions or potential solutions to at least minimize potential challenges due to the virus.
Could you guys, there's a question in here about the standardization of bouldering boulders between events. So could y'all touch on how the scoring will work this year with Gaia?
I don't know about the scoring, but the standardization of boulders is an effort that we're making. The route setting program manager, Mike Bacchino, is having calls with route setting teams at all these host facilities to try and help ensure some standardization with the boulders. I mean, it's a known and prevalent issue, even in a small area, that from one gym to the next, the difficulty of one boulder may be different than the same graded boulder at another facility. So just trying to talk to the setting teams to help further that standardization, but also ensuring that the same distribution of boulders are set within each host facility in a given region, so there's no unfair advantage for point gathering, if you will.
Another question that we've received is, what should competitors do if gyms don't open in their region before the start of the qualifying season, or at any time during the qualifying season?
If a specific gym doesn't know, well, hopefully there are other host facilities within your area that you can attend a qualifying event. I think we would want to evaluate the specific area and the prevalence within the specific area, but just because one specific gym isn't open, we would have to evaluate that. I don't want to go as far to give us an actual solidified answer there.
Yeah, I think it's again, I think it speaks to the contingencies that we're actively contemplating. Should that occur, are there enough other gyms willing to host? If there's not, what are the other options available to us to permit a qualification event to happen still? Or even if that's not the case, what would then be, what would an advancement potentially even for regionals look like? What
What would be provided with a tutorial on how to use the Kaya app specifically for competitions.
Yep, there'll be some self-help tools that'll come out from Kaya, as well as some information that we're putting out in the FAQ that we'll release early next week to help guide you in how to send the boulders within the app, how to register for the event, how to edit your climbs, how to upload the videos.
You can read some of them.
Yeah, feel free to read some out. Ashley asks, if gyms in your region need to close again due to COVID, will the possibility to climb outside of your region be available for qualification?
It's already available outside of your region within your division.
Correct.
I think that's a place. I don't want to speak for John. We would look at if that became extreme and needed to be outside of division. We would look at that as a possible contingency. You want to answer something about that?
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the questions as they come up that I can actually see. Attempts are not tracked with the boulders, so they don't have anything to do with your ranking, and any ties that are in the system will remain in the system. So if we had a tie in 25th place, those competitors would advance to regionals or qualification. As far as scoring and updates go, the Kaya results system will show a general preliminary and unofficial results of kind of how the competitors are doing within each specific competition. While on that, the competitors that are registered for the competition will be the only ones, aside from the administrators, given access to it, that can see the results for the particular event, as well as see the videos that have been uploaded for that specific event. As far as official results, that'll be maintained on the USA Climbing website on the results page. It'll be a little delayed in the beginning, but we will be doing our best efforts and working very diligently to try and automate that so that it's more ongoing, or at least more quickly available to the competitors during the competition.
I'd say this is a place where the rapid development of the virtual series has led us to some challenges, and this will be one of those places where, as we have the unofficial results on Kaya, we'd certainly always hoped to provide this all in one place, but at least here initially, in order to get the series started, those will be unofficial results, but they will be live results from that competition, as John mentioned, that those competitors in that competition can see. And then, once that competition is complete, we have to export those results, verify, for example, that competitors put themselves in the right category and things like that, do any audits that we may do, and then, create an official result. So not ideal. I think it's one we would readily admit we had hoped to develop in its entirety, this kind of fully packaged result system, but it is on our radar for improvements as we go.
There's a couple of questions coming in on that point as to whether or not coaches will also have access to those results.
The only access that you'd have to be a Kaya app user and have paid for the event to have access to the results for that specific event. You could look at one of your competitors' phones and see the results, and then you can wait until the official results are posted on the USA Climbing website to be able to view those results. And just to address the boulders that are preset in the gym. So they're certainly, to make things easier for the host facilities, boulders that have been on the wall previously and may have been climbed by those that are going to compete in the event could be tagged as USA Climbing boulders for the competition period. So we understand that those competitors may have gotten on those boulders, but once they're tagged and identified as USA Climbing boulders, they're not allowed to get on them unless they're doing so during a competition period and part of that reservation system that we talked about. So as part of team practice, the competitors that are part of the team and at the facility shouldn't be working on the boulders outside of a competition period and during team practice.
Again, I think this is a key point John mentioned earlier, right? This goes to the culture of our sport. We're certainly counting on the coaches and our athletes to uphold the highest codes of conduct here in order, for this to work. We recognize there's places where, as John just outlined, right, in that example, you could use the system to gain advantage, whether for yourself or for your athletes. And what we hope is that our strong culture leads us to not do that. So.
I'm seeing a question here that I'll circle back in, but just to reemphasize, what we're communicating to gyms, to host facilities, is that the competition period has to be generally available to the public. They can't isolate a competition period just for their members. So if a gym out there is only open to members, hopefully what we're doing is talking to them about capturing additional spots that are for the public. There shouldn't be any host facilities out there that are only open to members, and eliminating the general day user from participating in the competition period.
That would be an event that we would look to remove from the system of events if necessary. If it was only going to be open for members, we would certainly not permit that as a event to maintain all of what we've discussed with host facilities, is that it needs to be open to all participants. I think I'll ask this one to John even here. The rationale to limit QE participation to within your home division. Travel and visiting comps has been a great experience in the past. Was sad to see it go.
So as we established a ranking leading into the regional championships, we wanted to ensure that the competitiveness came from within the region and came from within the division. So if you have a competitor going across the nation and getting ranking, whether it be in this unconventional method of scoring or what we had hoped to do for in-person events, it would have been a skewed ranking towards their regional qualification. So the decision was made to contain it within the region, but then we went outside of that and were okay with containing it within the division, and thought that the level of competitiveness was still good enough as we started looking towards the regional qualification.
I think also, from a responsibility standpoint, certainly agree with the comment that that is one of the great parts of the sport. But in the current times, it seems irresponsible for us as an organization to encourage or even allow significant travel in order to achieve those results. I think certainly we'd be questioned. Does that seem like a good idea, assuming or where we are today with COVID, with cases continuing to climb again? We wanted to try and allow people to stay as close to home to be as safe as possible.
Just to reemphasize a point that seems to keep coming up in the thread, is about regional boundaries and how you can qualify. So you can participate outside of your region and gain a score towards your high score, but the regions that you participate in have to come from within your division. So Division 1, for example, contains regions 11 and 12. So you'd have to participate in a QE event within region 11 or 12, but it counts towards your regional qualification in your specific home region.
Gym list for hosting.
Yeah, the gyms that are hosting, or at least tentatively hosting, are on the region's webpage. So if you go to usaclimbing.org and select regions page, you go to your specific region and you can see a table there that outlines the facilities that are intending to host. Now there's a couple of things that we're still doing with those host facilities, capturing the host agreements and a number of other things that we need to solidify to sanction their event, but it at least gives you an idea of who's going to host within your region.
How will you find events? This is in the FAQ, but how will you find events in the Kaya platform to know which events are available in your region? I think this will come in some of the tutorials from Kaya. but we are also on your regional coordinator Facebook pages. They should be posting events that have posting gyms that have agreed to host qualifying events as well.
So to locate an event, you'll actually go to the store. You go to the kayak, not the kayak app, but the kayakkclimb.com. You'll access the store, and then from there, once you've logged in using your kayak credentials, you'll be able to search for events that are available. Those events that are available are obviously the ones that we've sanctioned.
Speed question. I think I've seen a couple of these come through. Are we establishing qualifying times as a way of qualifying for speed nationals?
Yeah, we will be working on that. We haven't established the time yet, but that is one of the next priorities once we get the youth Red Point Series off the ground. Will be to turn our focus on speed qualifying times and the speed certification doc, and those, and hopefully we're able to run speed more of an in-person style event though.
Will we be dictating how many climbs of each grade are included at qualifying events?
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. In each host agreement, there are 3 levels of difficulty that a host facility could choose to set from, and it contains a distribution that we recommend. Within each region, the route setting teams and regional coordinators are trying to establish a standardized approach to that distribution. So how many V2s, how many V5s, how many V7s, so on and so forth are available within each host facility's competition period for each of those events.
Yeah, I think an exciting part of the virtual series is the ability for more gyms to host, to host events as well. So for smaller gyms that maybe in the past would have struggled to have enough boulders on the wall, hopefully this provides again an opportunity to engage more gyms in the local season and frees up our bigger facilities for hosting those larger events that maybe the small gyms couldn't host, such as regionals, divisionals, or nationals in the future. So I think it's a great way to kind of expand our reach to a broader range of facilities. While of course many of our big facilities will still host local events, but then also provide an opportunity for those big facilities that don't to then be more active in the regional, divisional, national space. Let's see.
There's one question that I saw pop up earlier on the thread, and also came in our questions earlier, was just about wearing masks and whether that would be required in the facilities. So again, to point out that we're utilizing local host facilities policies and procedures. So if they require masks to be worn during participation inside their facility, then it'll be required. Some areas, I know certain gyms maybe are following stricter policies than other gyms, and I believe our regional coordinators, at least in those areas, are trying to come up with a standardized approach that's followed by all host facilities. And I imagine it's probably the more stricter of the policies. So you can look on the region's webpage to determine if there's any standardized approach to restrictions when interacting with the competition period. Otherwise, you would adhere to the host facilities policies and procedures related to mask wearing.
I think this was an area as well, knowing that policies across the country were so varied. We felt like relying on local health departments and local gyms on what their guidance are for their facility, and trying not to establish a minimum guideline, if you will, felt like the right path forward to ensure in each area we're operating within the requirements of the local health departments and gym policies. One question I see I didn't mention from Annalise, wondering what was going on with the National Festival for C&Ds, an event we're still moving forward with, actively working to finalize a host facility location and build out of the program for that event. I'd say it's still one we're very committed to, very excited for building out that program to be more interactive for our season Ds. Again, I think that was slated for late June. Of course, a little subject to change these days, but still would anticipate it near that time.
We have a question coming in asking how the paraclimbing virtual series will work.
I mean, it's going to work the same way. There's a known challenge that we've identified that we're working with our paraclimbing committee to establish a suitable approach for some of our paraclimbing athletes to still compete. So our visually impaired paraclimbing athletes, the Kaya app currently doesn't work with visually impaired athletes in the way that some apps do. We are working with Kaya on developing that. It is a priority. But we are also working with our paraclimbing community in the interim to establish a suitable method for our visually impaired athletes to interact with the competition.
I see one for a potential start date for the collegiate season. I think right now we're saying that would be no earlier than November 30th. Again, what we're working through with Kaya is to get the system and the platform off the ground for the youth season, ensure that any bugs or kinks in the system are resolved in due time, and then launch the collegiate season, which obviously has a little bit longer time frame with which to run all disciplines in advance of collegiate divisionals.
I was going to bring up another question about team selection, or how the paraclimbing national team would be chosen, or even those to participate at the Youth World Championships in 2021 if it's held. So provided we're able to hold our national championship events and our team trials event, those national teams and invitations to international competition will come by way of the ranking from those events. So for 2021, the national team trials event will be what selects a ranking that we choose from, with the exception of our Olympic athletes who are already chosen for quota to international competitions. By way of ranking from the national team trials, the other disciplines quota will be filled at those international competitions. Same way with the youth national championships. That happens hopefully in July of 2021. If Youth Worlds happens later in August, Youth Worlds invitations will be fulfilled from the ranking from youth national championships in 2021. Same with paraclimbing. Paraclimbing national team will be fulfilled from the ranking of paraclimbing nationals, which we hope to hold the beginning of May. May. That's correct.
Someone asked if you could clarify the ranking system for the qualifying events. At the competition.
The ranking system at the competition. So each boulder will have a USA Climbing identifier on it. Each boulder will have a specific grade. The grade of the boulder is what determines the value of that particular boulder. So if you have a V6, a V6 is worth 600 points. So your top 5 highest completed boulders, in addition to videos being submitted, is what determines your total score. So if you climbed 5 V10s, which are worth 1,000 points each, you'd have 5,000 points as your total score at a specific event. For a regional ranking, that's also what we're talking about, the top 25 in your region. So I'm a competitor, I've got 5,000 points in my score at event A, and then another competitor at event B also has a 5,000 point score. Then we're tied in our regional ranking, unless we're tied. So maybe for first place, unless anyone else has 4 V10s and 1 V11 on their score, then they would outrank us in the regional ranking.
And then if we were tied, and I think John mentioned this before, if you had a tie at that 25th place, even if it was 25th, 26th, 27th, 30th, all tied with 2,000 points, for example, all of those individuals would advance. It would be at the break that the next, that the remainder of the individuals didn't advance.
Do we have a potential start date for the lead and speed season?
That is still on schedule. I'm trying to remember that off the cuff.
It's end of February.
End of February. Still as originally planned. Again, that may be a place depending on what we're seeing within the within COVID and the pandemic continuing, that we either lengthen that season, go to a virtual series, again making that decision 30 days, no fewer than 30 days in advance of that season as to when it would start and what format it would be in. I believe we'll make those decisions earlier than that, but I think trying to really be too early and really understand where we're headed as a country and the pandemic.
Jenny asks if USA Climbing will be dictating how many climbs at each grade are included in the qualifying events.
To my earlier points, we have a distribution list, three different distribution lists that we provided for host facilities to choose from, and the regional coordinators along with the route setting teams in each area are working together to try and identify a distribution list that they use across all the different events that take place within their region, in addition to how many extra boulders may or may not be added for a specific event. What we're trying to avoid is a known challenge that one host facility may offer 6 V10s, whereas another host facility doesn't offer 6 V10s, they only offer 2. Well, maybe at the aforementioned host facility, the amount of points available for your upper tiered competitor is more than at the other host facility's event, because they only had 2 V10s. So we're trying to establish some standardization, but it's not a requirement. We're not going to dictate that they can only have this many V10s or this many V5. We're asked that they adhere to this distribution list.
Carl asks if the Kaya account needs to be set up in the competitor's name, or can it be registered in a parent's name?
Say that again, Zach.
If the Kaya account needs to be registered in the competitor's name, or can it be registered under the parent's
Yeah, so
name?
for those that are, and for those that are 18 or older, they can register as normal within the Kaya. For those that are young, that are minors, the parents have to give them permission. For anyone that's 13 or younger, the parent has to register it under their name, and it would be basically creating an account for your competitor, but you're the only one that's using and accessing the app on behalf of your competitor. So those that are 13 and under effectively shouldn't be using the app.
Sarah mentioned in the previously submitted questions, the time allotment for each competitor, 2 hours, 3 hours, like our old comps. Again, this is a place with such varying restrictions around the country. We haven't set a minimum or maximum time allotment, knowing that, in some places, even here in Salt Lake City, some maybe an hour and 30-minute session, some maybe an hour session. Some might be 2 hour sessions. It all depends on availability in the reservation system. So we did not set a minimum for that reason, or maximum. And I think it also speaks to the 2 weeks. For example, if it's difficult to get more than an hour, for example, you're going to need to schedule multiple sessions, most likely, to complete your 5 highest boulders.
We had a question come in earlier. If do all attempts need to be video and submitted, or just the send attempts? And then how many attempts are allowed?
Again, attempts aren't counted in any way. So your final submission video should include all the things that we've asked for in our little self-help video created by Mike Bikino that's available on our webpage, and it'll also be circulated out in the FAQ that we send out early next week. It'll go over some tips and tricks on how to capture the video if you don't have a person with you, and what that video needs to illustrate. For example, a 4-point start, the climber interacting with the boulder the entire time, and the top of the boulder. So you should see the climb of the athlete going from start to finish in the boulder the entire time in the frame of video. It should not be edited in any way, fashion, or form, and it should include audio.
Other than from like dead time before the start or end,
Right.
Could be edited.
Yeah.
Is USA Climbing keeping track of any travel limitations for COVID for various regions?
Yeah, I think this is a great place, being part of the Olympic movement. One of our fellow national federations or national governing bodies is every week updating every restriction across all 50 states. It's a quite in-depth document. So it is one, of course, we're watching. I think getting down even in some cases, I think that one doesn't do so, but getting down to the local level, a key place where we count on our regional coordinators and the gyms communicating what's going on in very finite areas as well, but certainly keeping an eye on all of those as they're brought to our attention.
Again, the way you interact with the boulder, it's other than
That's
the
the
4
question
points.
first. What was the question?
What was the question? Oh, sorry. The question: will there be zones of qualifying events?
No.
So you'll start the boulder with a 4-point start. You'll finish the boulder with 2-hand finish, and there's no zone, so you get credit for topping the boulder. That's how you score. It's just like the old red point qualifying system that we had from 1 through 40. You get credit for the score when you top the boulder with 2-hand control.
There's a couple of questions coming in on the maximum number of qualifying events a competitor can compete in, and how many count towards regional qualification.
Yeah, sure. They can compete in it as many as they want, but again, remember, it comes from within a region, within your division, is how it counts towards your regional ranking. And again, it's not multiple events. It's not cumulative events. It's your highest score from one specific event that counts towards your regional qualification. So if you only get 10,000 points at your first event you participate in, you don't think you can better that score, well, then that's your score that counts. But if you think you can better the score and participate in a second competition and score 11 or 12,000 points, then you have a higher score, 12,000 points, not 22,000 points that attributes towards your ranking, top 25 towards regional championships. Bottom question there, Zach. Day passes. So the question is, if athletes, and I'll throw in another word, or spectators, may have to pay day pass fees associated with their participation in host facility. Sure, if you're not a member of a host facility, depending on what the host facility's policies and procedures are, again, you can check the region's webpage, our region's webpage, and see if there's any information that we already know about a host facility charging day passes, which most of them are. For the competitors who are non-members, some are also charging day passes for those that are members, and some are also charging day passes for spectators, because with each spot in limited reservations, you take away a spot from their reservation system. So not all of them are the same. So again, in the FAQ, there'll be encouragement and direction towards what you should do first to ensure you get a climbing reservation, and find out the little nuances that may take place from one host facility to the next. And also there could be a possibility that if you're able to sign up for multiple sessions in a day at a host facility, and may charge you 2 or 3 times for however many times you show up at the facility for a reservation spot. Again, that's on the host facility to determine that.
Just to recap, seeing Lisa just coming in, top score from 1 QE or top 2 QE scores, top score from 1 QE, just to make it super clear again. Again, these will be found. John has got this very thorough frequently asked questions document. We apologize not having in advance of this call. We wanted an opportunity for the board to approve the rules addendum, which is what that frequently asked questions document is based off of. So we anticipate that by the end of this week, with being able to release the rules addendum and frequently asked questions thereafter. Trying to see some of the others.
We do have a lot of questions coming in regarding those with competitors who are minors, and creating additional profiles on Kaya for each of their kids, or if they can create one account with all of their.
Every competitor has to have their own account. So you'll log into one competitor's account and score that competitor, then you log out and log into the other competitor's account. You have multiple children that are 13 or under, so you would,
Yeah, this keeps the leaderboard, right, a lot, not showing your name, for example, as the parent, but showing the your child's name. So it'll keep the leaderboard as if you will, accurate as possible, or representative of what's happening with each competitor in each division.
What will happen if a gym doesn't have a reservation system for their sessions? Or if they don't have one now, will they need to set one up before their session?
I'm gonna assume that means that there's no restrictions in place at that facility, in that anyone can register anytime, kind of like in a normal time. So they wouldn't have to set up a reservation system. It's just open to the public, so anybody can go to that facility, pay a day pass, or be a member or whatever, and participate at that climbing facility, as long as it's generally available to the public all times, and nothing's being partitioned off specifically for their members, where the members of that host facility have a distinct advantage over general day users. Then it's fine.
I think there's a good question submitted in advance. Can the videos be uploaded after the fact from a different device, recorded on an actual camera, for example, not a smartphone, or do they have to be recorded right in the app?
No, you'll be able to, it uses your camera feature. So yes, you can, while editing the boulder, you can upload directly from your the photo gallery of your phone, but you'll have to have captured the video on your device and then upload it into that boulder in the editing feature. And I imagine if you're using a different device, like a nice camera or some video system, that after you captured the video, you could then send it to your phone and then upload it into the Kaya app boulder that you need to put it on.
And these will be, Kyle will be addressing a number of these in their tutorials on how to use the Kaya app and how to upload videos, etc. Where are the Open Nationals being held, and when? Are all three disciplines to be contested separately but still at that event? I can take that one as John's looking at the next ones. Open Nationals, which again is now just the national championships, will be held in November of 2021. Location is yet to be determined. They will be a 3-discipline event. They will be contested separately. Not that we will not combine results to form combined teams if necessary as well, but no location has been announced as of yet. I think, as has been mentioned numerous times, this is a place where we are looking at potentially taking these events outdoor and to large urban environments, when possible. Maybe not all the time, but when possible. When will the Kaya tutorials be available?
I don't have an exact date. I do know they're ahead of schedule, and we're trying to get it to you as soon as possible.
I would anticipate, John doesn't like to choose dates. I'd anticipate sometime next week that we would see those tutorials, hopefully. But as John mentioned, they're actively working on those, as they finalize the last pieces for the system to operate. Can you see the overall regional ranking so you can, sorry, I'll read this one. Can you see the overall regional ranking so you can try to up your score to get in the top 25 before the qualifying season ends?
Yeah, it'll, like I said, we're going to try our best to further automate the results display, the official results display, so that's a little more instantaneous, or at least more readily available daily by, every other day. But at the end of the competition period, at minimum, we would be generating a regional ranking so that athletes that participated during that event understand where they rank regionally, and to your question exactly, can understand what they need to do at the next event they intend to try and increase their ranking.
Yeah, so as each event is open in that 2-week period, we hope to establish a ranking out of that frequently. Our commitment is to at least once during the event update the kind of ranking from that event and the regional qualification at the end of the event within a few days at most, to be able to publish an updated regional ranking. Of course, as you get to the very last qualifying event, that may become challenging to see exactly what you need to do in those last few days. but you'll have a picture from no longer than a week beforehand of what you need to do to get there based on current results of people.
We've had a couple of questions come in as to whether or not people will have to pay for the qualifying event and for a gym's day pass.
Say that again, Zach, sorry.
So we've had questions come in as to whether or not a competitor will have to pay for the qualifying event itself and for a day pass to access the facility on that day.
Yeah, the qualifying event itself costs $30 plus a 2.9% credit card fee. Outside of that, what's charged by the host facility is up to them. So you may have a membership already, and they may not charge you a day pass. They may also elect to charge you a day pass if you are a member, but if you are not a member, they may charge you a day pass as well. It might be a discounted day pass, but it cannot be over their normal rated day pass.
Yeah, this is a place I think we tried to work closely with the gyms to offer ideally a discounted day pass for non-members at a minimum. And as John mentioned, to by no means charge excess of their day pass. Certainly, I think we all understand that the challenges the gyms are facing with limited capacity. So we felt this was, really the, if you will, the fairest possible approach. And similar, I think, Dana, a question just came through about diversity, equity, inclusion. How does this qualifier series, given that those with more money, the ability to travel, have a greater advantage on attending more comps to better their score? One of the things I was really excited about with this series is I feel like it provides a better opportunity for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I can, as a local competitor, I could go compete at my gym, down the street, and earn enough points to qualify for regionals. Certainly, there's always a challenge with those with the means to travel and try and up their score. But at least in this scenario, hopefully more gyms are hosting events. They're closer to home, so travel costs are even lower. And a gym can host multiple events within the same qualifying season. So it's possible, and I believe certainly probable for athletes to be able to basically go to their home gym very close by, earn their qualification, and not have to go to additional events, spending additional funds. So it's a place that I believe it really does include or increase diversity, equity, and inclusion, but certainly a good point as well, Dana. I'll take some of the other questions outside of the CIAP that had come in advance. I think I'll even take a hard one here from Steve. I'd like to understand what resources USA Climbing will put into aiding our climbers into being more competitive in international competition. Any thoughts around hiring a dedicated sports psychologist? I think this is a place we talk rather frequently, and this is John's world, on what can we do to improve our athletes' performance at the highest levels. So we have great resources within the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee that actually have provided sports psychologists in the past. We have a partnership that will be formally announced with the University of Utah, where we can also access some of those additional services, whether it's dietitians, sports psychologists, physiotherapists, etc. So great question. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
We've had a question come in as if the athletes, do any athletes receive buys to regionals and therefore do not have to participate in the local qualifying events?
Yeah, we'll have the special case list out soon. It'll be much the same as it has been in years past, for your national champions, your national team, your world champions, those that live in Alaska or Hawaii, or have buys to regionals.
We've already, I think, touched on it, but how will ties in a scoring be handled, and do ties advance?
The ties advance, ties
for
remain.
25th, yeah. Do you want to open for any live questions, or this seems to be working pretty well? So it is 7:30, knowing there's 150 of you still joining and participating. We're happy to go a little longer and answer some more questions for you, and then we'll wrap up shortly. If you book reservations from
just posted that.
and so you got a quick yes there. Yeah.
Well, it's not so if you book 2 reservations in a row on the same day, does that count as 2 events? Only if there are 2 events that you're participating in that you've registered for within Kaya. So if you have, host gyms within your region that are close in proximity, and you can get reservations at both of those facilities, and they're both hosting an event in the same competition period, then sure, you can participate in 2 events in the same day. But at the same facility during the same competition period, any number of reservations, it's all the same event that you're participating in. You can only better your score at that one specific event.
Joe, answering your question, adult nationals isn't to November. Is USA Climbing expecting to have competitors at World Cups? That's a longer question. The short answer to that is, again, there's a team selection, team trials, I should say, a team trials event that'll be held in mid-March, which will select the team to represent Team USA at World Cups in the coming season. And as I mentioned quite a bit earlier, the Olympians have their spots to all events in advance of the Olympic Games. So additional spots will be filled by results from that team trials event in March. As it relates to funding, I think we touched on that briefly, but I think it is a place we continue to do everything we can to support the athletes when they do represent Team USA. What I'd say on a big picture is we are unable to fund attendance at all events, but we're getting closer each year to making that a reality. So.
We had a question come in as how many routes will each facility have dedicated for their qualifying events?
It's a minimum of 30. And then again, to some earlier points, we're trying to standardize the distribution list amongst the host facilities within a specific region, standardize the grading, and then also ensure that our younger categories, C's and D's, are accounted for when the setting takes place. That's why route setting program manager Mike McKeon and myself have been a part of a lot of calls within each region with route setting teams to try and help with that standardization. And then to further address some other questions that came up a little earlier, again, about the equity within the boulder grading itself and sandbagging and so on and so forth. It's a known challenge that exists in all host facilities right now, all commercial facilities. The grading difficulty within one facility may feel softer than it does in another facility you climb in the same area. So each setter is going to have his own gauge for how something feels. And we are trying to have conversations with them about trying to standardize that approach. But without being there myself at every event, I can't assure that everything's going to feel the same. And even in doing that, things are going to feel differently. So it's a known challenge that we're trying to work around, but we certainly understand it's going to exist.
And hopefully within a region or division, many of you probably already know that within a number of the facilities that hopefully in addition to Mike speaking with them, your knowledge of what's occurring locally helps you choose which events to participate in. But I think as John mentioned, this was certainly one of the more challenging areas. Question from Jenny on the contingency plan for bouldering regional and divisional events. Just to reiterate here, I think we are still planning these as in-person events. My opinion, the way things are going today, that's probably questionable. So actively planning everything from a virtual regional event in each of the regions that could be conducted, modified version of this kind of local format with far more scrutiny that would allow for that event to continue either at the time that it's currently scheduled, which is mid-January, or even postponed to mid-February to allow the development of that in its entirety, in which case, as I mentioned, we would look at postponing the divisional championship as an in-person event to take place at the same time as lead and top rope divisionals. So it would become a 2-discipline divisionals if necessary. And my guess at this point in time is it's certainly looking like those will be necessary things we need to implement. Review again what the rules are for recording attempts.
Attempts don't count.
Simple. No need to record attempts. That certainly was a place we looked at in some of our original discussions around the virtual series of including attempts, but I think with more and more discussion, we determined that was a challenge that maybe was very difficult to overcome technically, but then also just maybe not necessary. We do not anticipate, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do not anticipate the regional coordinators evaluating, grading, and setting prior to a QE. We anticipate that being done by the setting team, as John mentioned, with correspondence from Mike Bikino to those teams as well on really what should be achieved there. I don't know. I think we've, unless there's any other questions that come in, we'll give maybe just a minute or two for any last questions that may come in or other ones that we see in the chat.
We do have some in the Q&A box that we're going through.
Are you watching the Q&A?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think we can also make these questions available and answer them in some fashion after this is over and share it with the membership.
Let's see, does the realignment of regions pose any new challenges, especially with COVID? I would actually, my belief there is with the increase in regions, if anything, it reduced the geographic space. So my hope there is that actually is minimized as opposed to creating any new challenges. Any other ones that have come in, Zach? They're coming in fast. I see, will boulder problems be based on points, like example 500 points or grade, example V5?
A V5 is worth 500 points, so it's based on multiple for the B grade. So B1 is 100 points, V2 200 points, 300 points, so on and so forth.
In the gym, they'll just be labeled 1 through 30, 1 through 40. They won't have the corresponding.
Some gyms will post grades, but some, because of culture in their facility, don't like to post grades to the climbs, but the grades will be available in the Kaya app. And if for whatever reason there are technical issues and you can't access the Kaya app, there'll be a readily available sheet at the front desk that will show you all of the climbs for the USA climbing competition, their associated grades, the color of the boulder. So the process will be to register for a spot on the gym site first, then for the USAC membership if one is needed, then the event on Kaya.
No, the process would be to have your USA Climbing membership. You can go and download the Kaya app already, become a Kaya member as well. Then the process would be, what's that? Well, I would be to identify a competition, sign up in the Kaya app for that competition, and then reserve a spot, or ensure your spot reservations are available within that 2-week window as well. But this will be outlined definitely more thoroughly in the FAQ, both the FAQ document, but also the Kaya documents as well. I think another good one, can a team practice be considered as the kids competing in the event? It shouldn't be, and those, as John mentioned earlier, they shouldn't be participating on event series boulders during their practice. A 16-year-old would register themselves directly in Kaya. They can.
Nothing stops them.
Yeah, they can, but they certainly the parent could do that for them as well. Let's see. I think we've caught most. Let me just go back to the chat, make sure there's none over there. I don't think so. Oh, yeah, 13.
Can you post the links to the video in the chat?
No, screen share.
Kim, thanks for your kind words. I certainly look to host more of these town hall events in the future. Probably not always with so much on the Kaya, but on any particular issues that or items that seem to be coming up. So my belief is quarterly a kind of a regular scheduled town hall.
There's a question about posting the links to the videos. If you go to the USA Climbing website, it's on the Youth Series tab. We're gonna try and post it right now and see if it works.
So we're doing that. Joe, any update on NCAA status? Yeah, I think this is, I mentioned earlier, we expect this to be more challenging, no question. Many schools are cutting sports at the current time. I think we still have a very compelling story for inclusion, but do definitely expect in the next year or two additional sports being added to the NCAA program being very, very difficult. But it's not one we're giving up on just yet. Catching up here, Malcolm saw this, I think, a longer question, but as it relates to, the price being a barrier to gym climbing and cost being a deterrent, certainly that was a concern, as we looked at what entailed. I think in many regions, the costs may actually be lower for this qualifying series than what many would have faced during in-person locals, and hopefully with reduced travel, with more gyms being able to host events, for example, even at the same time within a region, that the overall costs hopefully are lower, but certainly is continues to be a place where we try to find that balance and find ways to increase participation from those without the means to do so. So appreciate that. Well, it's 7:48. I think with that, a great opportunity to close the night. I want to take just a minute to thank everybody. There's still 110 people on the call for participating tonight. Appreciated the comments. Both coming in live, but also those sent in advance. And again, wish you and your family nothing but a healthy and safe fall here as we see a ramp up of COVID yet again. So we look forward, I can speak, I think, comfortably for all of us, to seeing all of you in person someday soon. In the meantime, look forward to seeing you all out on the Kaya app and seeing our kids back competing. So thanks again.
And then one last note, if your question wasn't answered tonight, feel free to email us at info@usaclimbing.org and we can answer it there for you. So thanks for joining, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a great night, everybody.